Professor Reychard, David Reychard, and today we will talk about the European institution and European Union bodies. So after the lecture, we will have some time for discussion, traditionally, yeah. So please, Professor Reychard, the floor is yours, so we can start.
And thank you very much, Dr. Iokova. And I am very happy to be here today with you students and colleagues. I'm going to be talking about the institutions of the European Union. My background, just a little bit, is I teach in Bratislava in Slovakia at the Comenius University, and I teach in the Institute of International Relations, which is the diplomatic academy for the Slovak Republic. So we'll get started here, and I'll share the screen with my PowerPoint for this lecture. So let me just set this up a little bit, and we should be ready to go. So, all right. So this is my presentation on the institutions of the European Union. I'm going to take away my video so that it's not distracting, so you can focus more on the lecture. But I'll come back from time to time with video when we have our discussion. By the way, students and colleagues, if you have any questions or comments that you want to make during the lecture, that's fine. You can stop me at any time and have a question or make a comment, okay? So let's begin here with the first part of the presentation. Sure. Okay, here we go. I start out with a couple of quotations. This first one is kind of funny, a little bit humor, but it's reality. It was Madeleine Albright. She was the foreign minister of the United States in the 1990s. Maybe you remember Madeleine Albright. And she said about the European Union, to understand Europe, you either have to be a genius or French. So what was she talking about there? Well, she was saying that it's very complicated. The European Union has many institutions and many rules and large bureaucracy. So she said, you either have to be a genius to understand the European integration, European Union, or French. Well, why French? Because the French very much developed the modern bureaucracy that we have. In fact, the word bureaucracy comes from the French language. So that's what she was saying about the European Union. So interesting. Now, here's another quotation. This is by Sebastian Kurz. I don't know if you remember Sebastian Kurz. He was the youngest prime minister, not only in Europe, but in the whole world for about a 4-year period. He was the prime minister of Austria a few years ago, Sebastian Kurz. I think, well, I don't know how old he was, maybe 29, and he was prime minister of the country, something like that, maybe even younger. And what he said is a little bit more positive. The European Union is not only a great idea, but it's also an idea we must keep working on. Yeah, and I think most of us agree with that. Yeah, it's a great idea. It has kept the peace in Europe for many decades, but it's something that every generation must continue to work on it and to make it better, to improve it. Yeah, so I agree with this one, Sebastian Kurz from Austria. Now, students and colleagues, today we're going to talk about the main institutions, the big institution. There are actually 7 key institutions of the European Union, but in this lecture, we will discuss the 5 fundamental ones, okay? So not all 7, but the 5 fundamental ones. The 2 that we will not discuss is the European Central Bank, which is in Frankfurt, Germany, located in Frankfurt, European Central Bank. We will not talk about the Court of Auditors, which is located in Luxembourg City. So we're going to talk about the major 5, the 5 fundamental institutions. And here they are. The European Commission we'll talk about, the Council of the European Union, European Parliament, the European Court of Justice, and finally, the European Council. Now, one of the problems with the language of European integration, the language of the European Union, is they use this word council a lot. So you have council, council, council. And you just have to kind of get used to that. You just have to kind of memorize that. Which council are they talking about? Okay. So we're gonna try to demystify this. We're going to try to make it more clear in this lecture, you know, all these different councils. Okay. So don't worry about that. I hope the Ukrainian translation is okay. I'm not a native Ukrainian speaker, but I had a little bit of help on this. So I hope the translation is okay. And it helps you a little bit if you don't know the English so well. Okay, let's get right to the start of this. And we're going to begin with the European Commission. The European Commission is our first institution that we'll talk about. And this is the logo of the Commission. This is their logo, okay? So that's what you'll often see on documents of the European Commission. This is their building in Brussels, the Berlaymont building in Brussels. That's the headquarters of the European Commission, okay? Berlaymont building. If you travel to Brussels, you'll probably visit that building, or you'll see that building. Very impressive one and kind of distinctive style. Yeah. By the way, there are buildings for each of these institutions, and they're really architectural creations, I would say. The European Union tries to make these buildings interesting looking. Okay, let's go right into it and talk about the European Commission. And this will be the English slide, and the next one will be in Ukrainian language. So if you don't understand all of the English here, the next slide will be in Ukrainian of the same information. So, okay, it's based in Brussels, as we said, the European Commission. Students and colleagues, each one of these institutions has a character, or a nature. And the character of the European Commission is supranational. You will hear that word a lot in your study of the European Union. What it basically means, supranational, is that the Commission it should be above the member states. It should be focused on what is good for the whole community, for the whole European Union, not just for Slovakia or for Germany or for Italy. Is supranational, above the regional nationalisms. Okay, so that's the character. And one of the interesting things about that, the commissioners or the members of this commission, they actually make a promise that they will work for the good of the entire organization, of the entire European Union, not just their own state, their own member state. Okay, so what is this commission? Well, it's the main executive body of the European Union. It's the executive, okay? There are 27 members. Why? Because we have 27 member states of the European Union. We have 27 commissioners, and that includes the president. So one of these 27 is the president, and we'll talk about the president in just a couple minutes. 5-year terms of office. So these 27 members appointed by each member state gets one. They're appointed for 5 years, and they all go into the commission together as a group, and they all go out together. Now, they can serve another 5 years. They can go again if they want. That'll be the new commission that's coming up in a couple of years. We'll get a new commission, okay? But they don't come in and out of the commission. They all come in, all 27 together, and all 27 potentially change every 5 years, okay? Now, each member, each commissioner, as we call them, commissioner, is given a portfolio area and a delegates general. Well, what is a portfolio area? Well, for example, if you are the commissioner from, I don't know, Bulgaria, and you are working at the Berlaymont building in Brussels, you will be assigned by the commission president a portfolio area. Now, that could be agriculture, that could be in finance, that could be in environment, that could be in trade, that could be in foreign policy. So you will be given a specialty, what we call a portfolio area. And this DG, this delegates general, this is kind of the bureaucracy of all the hundreds and thousands of employees that work for the commission that will be assisting you in your portfolio area. You can think of it, the DGs, as kind of the ministries. It's kind of the larger ministries of the commission within these different portfolio areas. Now, okay, what about these commissioner members or the members of the European Commission? Well, the commissioners or the members are proposed by their member states. So, for example, I live in Slovakia. The Slovak government proposed a person to be to be in this. Sometimes we call it the College of Commissioners, in this group of 27 commissioners. Yeah. And that person, we'll talk about him, is Mr. Šefčovič from Slovakia. And he is the commissioner from Slovakia. So once again, each member state gets one commissioner in this college of 27 commissioners. Then they have to be approved by the European Parliament. So that's not easy. They have to they are asked some very difficult questions by Parliament. And they have to have a lot of technical knowledge to be a commissioner. And sometimes the Parliament rejects. And then the member state must appoint somebody else or propose a different person to be their commissioner. So it's not so easy to go through this parliamentary questioning process. And then finally, once Parliament approves these 27 commissioners, they are formally appointed by the European Council. Now we'll talk about, don't worry, we'll talk about the Parliament and the European Council a little bit later, okay? There is a president of the European Commission, and he or she is proposed, again, by this European Council and elected by the European Parliament, okay? So they then give a voice of approval. Now, what are the roles of this commission? What does the commission do as this executive agency, this executive body of the EU? Well, the very first and most important role of the commission is to proposal role. The commission proposes new laws, new legislation. So if there is going to be a new law, EU law, it must start with the commission. The commission proposes all new laws or legislation. And that is a really big authority because no other institution has that authority. Only the commission can begin the process of a new law of the EU. Now, after the law is approved, and we'll talk about who approves that, the commission, the second role is implementation. That means that they are responsible for making this new law work. Yeah. And what we call follow-up and oversight, looking at the member states, the 27 member states, and say, Slovakia, are you following the law correctly? Or Germany or Spain or Portugal, are you actually implementing the law correctly? So that's the second role of the commission. First role, proposing new laws. The second, this implementation, follow-up, and oversight role of the member states. Now, what happens if a member state is not really following the law? Well, then the commission gives them a warning. And after some months, if they still are not following the law, the commission can refer the situation, the case, to the Court of Justice. And the Court of Justice can make a penalty on that member state, okay? So the commission is following up and oversight, looking over the situation of the member states if they are following the law correctly. Now, the commission also has a role in proposing the budget, Okay, so they begin the budget process with a proposal. What about new member states like Ukraine? Well, that begins with the commission. The commission opens the process for a new member state, for a country that would like to be a new member state, okay, like Ukraine. So the commission opens that process and monitors that process all the way through. Now, at the very end of that process, when the commission is satisfied, then they close it. And I believe, let's see, Parliament has to agree, okay, with the new member state coming, and all 27 member states must agree as well. If one member state says, no, we don't want this country to come in, then they don't come in. So it's not so easy, actually, to get into the European Union. But it all begins with the Commission. And it's good news if the Commission opens the process for your country. That means, it's optimistic. Okay, then the Commission also has a role in formulating foreign policy. That means diplomatic policy, security, trade, international trade policy, and treaties. The Commission opens treaties with other countries around the world. Okay. By the way, the Commission also has an arm. It's an extension of the Commission in foreign policy. It's called the European External Action Service. Basically, think about your country and think about the embassies or the consulates of your country around the world. Well, the European External Action Service is the diplomatic arm of the Commission around the world. There are 140 different delegations around the world. Probably made the most important is the one in Washington, D.C., of the European Commission. Okay, so now here's a little bit in Ukrainian language of those same points. So I'll give you just a few moments to have a look at this in case there was anything there that was not completely clear. And once again, if there are any questions or if there's any comments you want to make during the lecture, just unmute and you can, because I won't see your hand raised here because I'm not looking at the videos. So just stop me with unmute and ask a question or a comment, make a comment. Okay. So I hope the translation is okay, not too bad here. Yeah, so the Commission is very special. By the way, the Commission goes all the way back to the beginnings of European integration in the 1950s. You may recall in our last lecture, we talked about the European Coal and Steel Community. And that very first community had something like a commission. They didn't call it a commission, they called it the High Authority. But it was basically a commission. It's basically what we have today. So this institution goes back to the 1950s. Okay, so let's continue then. Now, the commissioners, as I said, are proposed by the member states, but they're proposed by the member states through another institution called the Council of the European Union. Yeah. And then after approval of the European Parliament, right, we talked about that, the Parliament must approve these commissioners. They are formally appointed by the European Council. Now that sounds, I know that sounds very complicated, but it's really not. You just have to get used to the language here, okay? And we're going to talk about all these other councils, so don't worry about that. So the commissioners are proposed first by the member states, but through this other institution that we will talk about next, the Council of the European Union. Again, and it's a high prestige to be a European commissioner. High prestige. You're there for 5 years. You're an expert on your area of policy, of European policy. And if you're the agriculture minister, if you're the agriculture commissioner, you should be an expert on European agricultural topics and issues. Okay, we talked about this. Commissioners swear an oath at the European Court of Justice, which is located, interestingly, not in Brussels, but in Luxembourg City. and they pledge to respect the treaties and to be completely independent in carrying out their duties. Basically, that's that supranational dimension. They should be above the member states. Now, it's true, they're appointed by the member states, but they should not be directly representing. For example, Mr. Šefčovič from Slovakia, if he's doing a good job as commissioner in the European, he's not representing Slovakia. He's representing what is good for the whole European Union. Once again, that's called supranational orientation, supranational. And that's the character or the nature of the European Commission. Now, we talked a little bit about the Commission president, and one of the 27 of these commissioners is nominated and appointed as the president. Now, who does that? Well, that involves another institution that we'll talk about, the European Council, get together, and they decide which of these 27 will be the president for 5 years. And they all got together a few years ago, and they voted on I think she's Dr. Ursula von der Leyen. Yeah, I think she's actually a medical doctor, as I recall. Yeah, Ursula von der Leyen, a former defense minister of Germany. Interesting, yeah. And so I'm sure you're all familiar with her picture here. You see her in the newspapers and magazines all the time. She is the president of the Commission. What are some of the duties of the president? Well, the president has a lot of authority. When the president travels around the world, she represents not the whole European Union, but she represents the Commission. And that's a very big authority. She also has a great role in determining the portfolio areas given to the other commissioners on the Commission, assigning portfolio areas and setting the agenda. So, you know, in the past, we have had very weak commissioners, and they did not really, I would say, advance integration or deepen integration. But then we've had some very activist, some very strong commissioners, and that have gone further in integration and expanding the European Union. And I would say I would put Dr. von der Leyen, I would put her in the stronger category. Yeah. Now, we then talk about the whole group of commissioners, the 27, as a college in English, a college of commissioners. Okay, so that's the phrase they use in English, college. And here they are. This is the current commission, the 27, each one from a different member state. Mrs. von der Leyen, of course, from Germany. I'm trying to find Mr. Šefčovič there. He usually is somewhere there with a smile, because his usually big smile all the time. Well, they're all kind of smiling. Okay, but that's our commission. Here's another view, a little bit better view. There's Mrs. von der Leyen in the center, of course. And let me see. Oh, Mr. Šefčovič is just below her, center bottom. That's from Šefčovič from Slovakia, the commissioner from Slovakia. By the way, each one of these, as I said, has a portfolio area, specialty, and there are some stronger portfolio areas and some weaker. So weaker might be social, cultural, educational, a little bit weaker. Stronger, the really hot portfolio areas that everybody would like. Foreign policy, for example, trade. Yeah, commissioner for trade, agriculture. These are some of the big ones. Yeah, really, really powerful portfolio areas. Okay, I put here, but the actual European Commission is not just the 27 commissioners, but around, look at this, 32,000 European civil servants who work for the Commission. So, you know, those of you who are students here, if any of you are interested in going to Brussels and working for the Commission, you have a pretty good chance, 32,000 positions there. Now, many of these people are working in departments of the Commission, and we talked about this, the DGs, the Directorates General. Those are the ministries of the commission that specialize in the agriculture, in the finance, in the environment, in foreign policy, all the different areas, the Directorates General. So you may, who knows, you may go to Brussels later and find work in the European Commission as one of these 32,000 European civil servants. So really, really large organization. And by the way, the Directorates General are very powerful. Some people think they're more powerful than the commissioners because they formulate the proposals. And then, of course, the commissioners at the very top of this hierarchy, they will decide among which proposal to actually propose. Only the commissioners can actually make a formal proposal. But these proposals are formulated much lower in the hierarchy. So many people, oh, the Directorates General, they have the real power in the commission, not only the commissioners. Okay, the Directorates General are headed by a Director General in each one of these, who reports to the specific commissioner in his policy area, as we talked about. So if you're the Agricultural Commissioner, you're going to be in consultation with the Director General of the Agriculture Directorates General, the agricultural civil servants of ministerium. Okay. Now, here's what I already mentioned. Many believe it is the Directorates General who have the real power in the commission, not only the 27 commissioners. I would agree with that. I would say, it's because that's where policy is formulated. And then by the time it gets up to the level of the commissioners, maybe the commissioners would be presented with, I don't know, 5 to 8 different proposal possibilities, and they will choose. But who creates these proposal possibilities? It's the Directorate General at the lower level. Now, one of the commissioners, one of the 27, is well, you could call him the foreign policy, the commissioner for foreign policy. But the formal title of this commissioner is the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. And it's currently the commissioner from Spain, Josep Borrell. And Borrell, he was a socialist politician in Spain, so center-left. And he's the current, you would say, the foreign minister of the European Union. Yeah, he is high profile. He travels around the world. He has met with, world leaders like Biden and Putin and other world leaders. So very important position. Was there a question there or a comment, somebody? Yeah, feel free just to stop me at any moment. Yeah. Okay. So we'll continue here. Yeah, one of the 27 is the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. So here is, I live in Slovakia, so that's why this is just an example of a typical commissioner. This is Mr. Šefčovič Maroš, and he's from Slovakia, and he's very intelligent man. He's come to speak to us at the university here with the students in Bratislava a couple times. He has been given the portfolio area Commission for Interinstitutional Relations and Foresight. Wow, what does that mean? It basically means that he's the coordinator for how the 5 big institutions, well, we could actually say the 7, interrelate to each other. So his job is to make the communication among these institutions smooth, and perhaps to propose new laws, EU laws, for doing that. So that's an important role. That's a pretty important portfolio area. This is his second commission. Before the current commission with Mrs. van der Leyen, he was also in the last commission as the energy commissioner. That was a pretty hot portfolio area, the energy. But then they changed. Now in the van der Leyen commission, he's the Commissioner for Interinstitutional Relations. Oh, excuse me, let me go back. Okay, now we come to our second institution, the Council of the European Union. By the way, you know, again, we're running a little bit behind, I think. So I don't know if we'll have time for questions. So, you know, really, if you have any questions during the lecture, you know, we can stop and talk a little bit about that. That might save us a little time, if you know. So please feel free. This is the logo of the Council of the European Union. It's located in Brussels at the Europa building. Europa building. Again, really interesting architecture here. If you look closely, you can see the globe, a globus there. Yeah, this is called the Council of the European Union. You may have heard an older phrase for this institution, the Council of Ministers. And many people still use that. They will say, oh, the Council of Ministers. What they're really talking about is the Council of the European Union. Why do they say Council of Ministers? That was the older name coming from the 1950s again. Okay, so what is this institution? Well, it's based in Brussels, as we said. Now, what is the character or the nature? It's not supranational. It's what we call intergovernmental and very secretive institution, maybe the most secretive among the five. Now, first of all, what does it mean, intergovernmental? Well, intergovernmental means that the representatives from the member states who are on the Council of the European Union, they are not thinking what is good for the whole union, what's good for the European. No, if they're doing a good job, they're thinking what's good for Slovakia, what is good for Germany, what is good for Poland or Italy, right? Intergovernmental interests. So this is one of the most intergovernmental of the institutions, the Council of the European Union. And by the way, this is one of the reasons it's the most secretive institution, because the member states are fighting about their interests in this institution. They don't want media there. They don't want cameras and a lot of attention. They like to meet behind closed doors, yeah, because it's the kind of brutal politics, yeah. Okay, now this institution has a rotating presidency every 6 months. And what's interesting, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, the presidency of the Council of the European Union is not a person, it's a country. And it changes every 6 months. One of the 27 member states becomes the president. What is the role of the president? Very important role. The president becomes the chairman of almost all of the councils. And we'll talk about this in just a second. What are all these councils? But the president, the country that is the chairman for 6 months, becomes the chairman of all the councils within the Council of the European Union. That means that the president sets the agenda. Like, for example, if Austria is the president for 6 months of the Council of the Year, Austria will set the agenda for the next 6 months. What are we going to talk about? Okay, so that's a pretty big power. That's a pretty big authority. Okay, again, it's known informally as the Council of Ministers. Now, this next point is important. But a lot of people don't understand. The Council of the European Union is actually not just one council, but 10 councils of ministers. So imagine you've got the Agriculture Council of Ministers. You've got the ECOFIN, which is about economics and finance. You've got the foreign policy, foreign affairs. You've got energy. You've got environment. You've got these 10 different councils within the Council of the European Union. And each of these 10 councils is chaired by the country or a representative of the country that is the president for that 6 months period. There's one exception. The Foreign Affairs Council is not chaired for example, by Austria, if Austria is the president. The Foreign Affairs Council is chaired by that high representative, Mr. Borrell from the Commission. That's an exception. He's the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Council. Now, what are these councils, these 10 different councils? Well, there are 27 members, because we have 27 member states, right? On each of these 10 councils, plus a commissioner. So imagine, let's say we're talking about the Agriculture Council of this Council of the European Union. You got the 27 agriculture ministers of the 27 member states, yeah? Or if you're talking about energy, you've got the 27 energy ministers. Now, what is this commissioner there for? Because I put there 27 members on each council, okay? So let's say we're talking about the Agriculture Council. So you've got 27 agricultural ministers from the different member states, plus you've got the Agriculture Commissioner from the European Commission. Now, why? Why did they put this person there? Well, remember we talked about the Commission should be supranational. They should be thinking what's the good for the whole Union. And so the commissioner is there to remind these 27 agriculture ministers, hey, you should not, hey guys, you should not just be thinking of your own country interests. Think what's good for the whole Union in agriculture. So, but this commissioner doesn't have a vote. It's only the 27 agricultural ministers that actually can vote. The commissioner is there at the meetings just to remind them or motivate them to act a little bit unselfishly for the whole Union. But actually, to say the truth, the Council of the European Union, this is the institution where the European Union allows countries to act selfishly in their own interests. Shouldn't say selfishly, but simply in their own interests. You know, what's good for agriculture in Slovakia is maybe not the same as what's good for agriculture in Italy or another country. So member states have their own interests. And there's a lot of fighting in these meetings, and there's a lot of politicking, yeah? And that's why we call it the James Bond 007 institution, because it's very secret what they do. They don't want a lot of cameras there. Now, the council votes in 3 ways. Unanimity, that means all 27 have to agree in some policy areas. The one that comes to my mind is foreign policy. If there's any proposal about foreign policy, and they're voting on this proposal, got to be all 27 that say, yes, we want to go in this foreign policy direction. Majority, yeah, in most cases, majority, that would be simple majority, 51% or more. And then in most cases, qualified majority, like a 2/3 majority. What it basically means, a certain percentage of votes. I think it's 55% is now the qualified majority in most of these votes, representing 65% of European Union population among the member states. Yeah. Okay, now what is the role of the Council? What's the purpose of this Council of the European? The main role is decision-making role. Okay, what does that mean? Well, we talked about the Commission, right? The Commission proposes a new law of the European Union. Well, the Council of the European Union, they decide, yes, it will be a new law, or no, it will not be a new law. They basically manage this proposal and they vote on it. Now, I put with the European Parliament because in the last, I would say 20, 25 years, the European Parliament has grown in power to where they're now almost equal with the Council of the European Union, and they vote together. So once again, the European Commission make a proposal for a law, and that proposal will go to the Council of the European Union to vote on that, if it should be a law. And then it will also go now to the European Parliament, and they have to vote if it will be a law. There's a name for that, co-decision. co-decision. It means both institutions, the Council of the European Union and the European Parliament, must both agree on a proposal of the Commission if it's going to be a law. Remember, the Commission has no power to make a law. The Commission can only propose. And the Council of the European Union and the Parliament, they decide about those proposals. Okay? Here it is a little bit in Ukrainian language. So just kind of have a quick look there, just to be sure everything's kind of clear. There's one exception to Parliament. Parliament does not have a vote in foreign policy. Now, Parliament can recommend, they can recommend, but the final vote in foreign policy must be a unanimous decision by the think of the Council of the European Union, the Foreign Affairs Council, the 27 foreign ministers. They must unanimously say yes to a foreign policy proposal, and then it can be a reality. So a Parliament has a weaker role in foreign policy, but that's it. That's the one exception. So just a quick look there. By the way, this institution of the Council of the European Union goes all the way back to the 1950s. The coal and steel community had a council of ministers. Basically, same thing. But of course, those were energy ministers at that time because the coal and steel community was only focused on coal and steel. And you only had 6 member states back then. So you had a council of ministers of 6 member states. 6 ministers of energy from the 6 member states, talking about coal and steel. Okay, so let's have a look now at these a little bit deeper. Oh, okay, we had this already. The president of the Council of the European Union is not a person, but a country. We talked about that. So let's have a look a little deeper here at this president today. 3 successive presidencies in a row are known as a presidency trios, 3 together. Now, why do they have this presidency trios? Well, it's to give a smooth transition. So when one country is going out and another country is coming in as president, the 3 should be working together with the future country that will be coming in next to make a smooth transition in terms of the agenda, in terms of the functioning of the presidency, the office of the presidency. The current trio is made up of France. They were from January to June 2022. Czech Republic, they were July to December 2022. And Sweden is the current president. They are currently president of the Council of the European Union. What does that mean again? That means that Sweden is going to be chairing almost all of those councils that we talked about. We had the 10 councils. They're going to be chairing 9 of those. Who is going to chair, for example, the Agriculture Council? The Swedish Agriculture Minister will be chairing that Agriculture Council. Okay, those meetings. That, again, that's a big power because they can set the agenda for 6 months. Now, these are the 10 councils that currently exist. And I'll just read them and you can have a look. And then I have them in Ukrainian language here. General Affairs Council, the Foreign Affairs Council, Economic and Financial Affairs Council, Agriculture and Fisheries Council, the Justice and Home Affairs Council, Employment, Social Policy, Health, Consumer Affairs Council, Competitiveness Council, Transport, Telecommunication and Energy Council, Environment Council, and finally, Education, Youth, Culture, and Sport Council. And here they are in Ukrainian language. Again, I hope the translation is not too bad. I hope it's okay, at least to give you some idea of these councils, of what they are, these 10 councils. Again, on each of these 10 councils, all 27 member states are there. The 27 ministers for each of these areas are there on each of these councils. And of course, they're meeting separately at different times in Brussels. And here's the rest. Okay, and some of this basic information you can get off the internet. So if you can't write it all down here or whatever, you can certainly just Google it, and you can look at Wikipedia or something, and that they will show you some of the same information. Okay, the Council of the European Union also has a bureaucracy similar to the Commission. Remember the Directorates General of the Commission, these 32,000 administrative staff. Well, in the Council of the European Union is called COREPER, the Committee of Permanent Representatives. It's the civil servants, yeah, of the member states that are assisting in Brussels with the work of the Council of the European Union. Again, it's in the hundreds and thousands of bureaucrats and administrators. So you may find yourself in Brussels working for the Council of the European Union with COREPER. Put there, its role is to prepare the agenda for the Council of the European Union meetings of those 10 councils, oversees, coordinates the works of 250 different committees that are associated with those 10 councils. And very often there's a stereotype about bureaucracy in Brussels and the European Union. And now you can see why the stereotype is kind of a core truth in there. That is because it's just a massive number of individuals working for the European Union in Brussels. And here I have it in Ukraine, so you can have a look there. So once again, get it in your mind, the Commission is supranational, thinking what's good for the whole European Union. The Council of the European Union, these 10 councils, they're focused on their member states. What can we get for Slovakia? What can we get for, for Portugal and so forth? Yeah, Bulgaria. And that's okay. That's okay. That's the purpose. That's expected. Okay, now we come to our third institution, one of the favorites because it's democratic, the European Parliament. European, and that's the logo of the European Parliament. Okay, that's their logo. Okay, this is their building. And interestingly, their building is not in Brussels, but it's in France, in Strasbourg. Why? Well, it started out there in the 1950s, yeah, and they stayed in and the member states seem to be okay with that. I mean, this is my opinion. It would be more logical to move the whole thing to Brussels, but that's where they are, and they seem to like that distance from Brussels. Gives them a little space, maybe a little breathing space, huh? Again, very interesting building. This one I've actually seen. I've been to Strasbourg, and this is a very impressive building. I don't really like modern architecture too much, but this one is I kind of like this one. Okay, now based in Strasbourg and in Luxembourg and Brussels. Now this is interesting. 3 different locations for the Parliament. Strasbourg is the formal building, parliamentary building, where they do the plenary sessions. Plenary, it means the formal voting, where they go and they make the formal process and they vote, and the media is there with the cameras and all. That's Strasbourg, yeah. Luxembourg, that's where they have their administrative headquarters in Luxembourg City. And then Brussels is where the members of the European Parliament, we call them MEP, Member European Parliament. Brussels is where they have their offices. Their individual offices are in Brussels. Of course, they have offices in Strasbourg also. But most of the time, if you want to locate your representative, if you're a member state, from a member state of the EU, and you want to say, where can I meet the people, these members of the European Parliament representing Slovakia or Ukraine, if Ukraine comes to the Union, you wouldn't normally find them in Strasbourg. Most of the time they're in Brussels, because that's where they work out their business, much of their business. And then they go to Strasbourg for the formal voting. What's the character of the parliament? Well, of course, democratic. It's actually the only democratic institution of the five. That's kind of a criticism sometimes by some people. They say, "Oh, we need more democracy in this European Union." Well, maybe it's coming, but the parliament certainly is the most democratic. It wasn't always that way. Before 1979, the members of the parliament were not elected directly by the people within the European Union member states. They were appointed by the member states themselves. And in 1979, there was a change in the law, and the people got the vote to vote for their members of the European Parliament. Okay, there's a president of this parliament elected for a 5-year term. Excuse me. I think I have to check that. I think that's wrong. I think it's a 2.5-year term. Well, maybe one of you clever students, you can go online and check that right away. I think it's not 5-year. I think I'm wrong about that. I think it's 2.5-year term for the president. Now, what is the role of the president of the parliament? Agenda, setting the agenda. And we're going to talk a little bit further down. You see committees there. Do you see the word committees? The members of the parliament are assigned to committees on the basis of their expertise. So, and what are these committees? Well, you have the agriculture committee, you got the banking committee, you got the energy committee, you got the environment committee, you got the foreign policy committee. So the president has a big role to play in who gets on what committee from these members of the European Parliament. There are 705 members. Now, something that you should really be amazed, 705 members. Well, in the United States, what do we have? We have like 425 members of Congress, something like that altogether. And that is a big number. That's a huge number, 400 plus, 425 or so. 700, and that's an enormous. So I believe it was the Treaty of Lisbon that put a cap on the number. So no more members, 705, that's enough, because that's a real difficult number to manage. Now, they are elected for 5-year terms, and they can go again, right? They can go again and again and again. And the people that vote, you have to be a European citizen. That means you have to be a citizen of a country that's a member state. You have to be at least 18 years old to vote in these European elections. One more thing about European elections, they have been very low turnout. Unfortunately, I think my country here in Slovakia has one of the record for the lowest turnout, something like, 12% or 13%, a number of years ago, of all the people that came out in Slovakia to actually vote. So what they're trying to do now, the European Union is trying to get people to recognize that this vote is important and you have to get out there and vote. Yeah. And so I think it's been a little bit better in more recent years, but it has in the past, it's been very, very poor in terms of voting percentages across the member states. We said committees. There are 20 committees. They call them standing. A standing committee, the word standing, it means more or less a permanent committee that doesn't change really from year to year, like the agriculture committee. It's pretty stable. It's been there all this time. These committees actually have their offices in Brussels. And that's why I told you that the members of the European Parliament, most of the time, you will find them in Brussels. You will not find them in Strasbourg. Okay. Why? Because they're working with these committees on their area of expertise. Then they come back to Strasbourg for the big debates and the formal voting. Okay, so what is the role of the parliament? Well, decision-making role, very similar to the Council of the European Union, Council of Ministers. Again, we call that co-decision. Do you see that? Co-decision. Parliament and the Council of the European Union, or Council of Ministers, informally, They together decide what will be European Union law. They consider the proposals of the Commission, okay? Except in foreign policy. That's the exception, where the Council of the European Union, they have the authority there. Okay, what else do they do? The Parliament must approve new member states and new treaties. So if there's going to be a treaty, the last one we had the Treaty of Lisbon, right? They've got to approve that. Okay, what about the Commission? They must approve a new commission. Remember I told you 27 commissioners all come in together as a body, and all of them must be approved by the Parliament. By the way, it's interesting. Parliament also has the authority to throw them out. Yeah, and that almost happened. In the 1990s, there was a rather corrupt commission under the presidency of Jacques Santer. I believe he was from Luxembourg. He was the commission president in the 1990s. Now, I think Jacques Santer was a pretty good guy. So he wasn't corrupt, but there was some corruption in his commission. And remember, I told you that the commissioners all come in together and they all go out together. Well, the Parliament can kick them out, but they don't just kick out the bad ones. If they kick them out, they kick out the whole commission, all 27. Well, this was probably going to happen because of this corruption by a few of the ministers. And Jacques Santer and his commission resigned. They said no, they left voluntarily rather than go through this humiliating process of being kicked out by the Parliament. Here it is in Ukraine a little bit. Again, check that information. Maybe one of you can quickly look there and see the presidency of the Parliament and how long, what's the elected number of years for the president of Parliament. Yeah, and you could correct my information there on that. Again, if there's any questions or any comments you want to make, just unmute. Don't be afraid. Okay, let's continue.
Okay, sorry, Dave. I
Yes.
think that someone has a question.
Good.
Yes,
please.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For your opinion, dear speaker, is it true that some EU members are afraid to the fact that Ukraine can occupy a huge number of parliamentary seats, and that's why the influence of some countries in European Parliament will decrease?
Absolutely. Yes. Very good comment. You're absolutely right. There is this fear based on interests of the member states, especially the larger countries that dominate the organization now, like France and Germany. You are absolutely right. That's one of the reasons why Turkey never got in. Turkey has this very large population, and suddenly, if Turkey comes into the Union, think of the change in the Union. In terms of voting in these different institutions, especially the Council of Ministers and the Parliament. You're absolutely right. So it's not only about culture, and it's not only about a rule of law and managing corruption. It's really about power. And that's, in fact, do you remember our last lecture when we talked about the history in the 1960s that the United Kingdom wanted to become a member state? Charles de Gaulle vetoed them. He vetoed them twice, the British. He didn't want them in this European community, as it was called at that time. Why? Power. France wanted to dominate it. And if the United Kingdom would come in, that's a big country that would have a big voice, a lot of votes. And so I think you're absolutely right. I agree with that. Okay, now, what about the organization of Parliament? Well, Parliament is organized according to political party groups, okay? The dominant political party Actually, you know, we don't always use just political. They often use the word group. And I'll tell you why. It's still not exactly political parties. Political party, if you have a real political party, it's organized all the way down to the grassroots level, the lowest level of the political hierarchy. It's not really true with these European political parties. They're groups of people that generally have an ideological bent toward that group. So, for example, the biggest group in the European Parliament, traditionally and still today, is the group of the European People's Party. Now, these are conservative and Christian democratic politicians from the member states of the European Union, okay? And they just come together and they find them, they naturally are merged into the group of the European People's Party. Interestingly, the members of the European Parliament do not sit together by country in the Parliament. They sit together by their ideological group. Okay, so they're together by their group. Second largest is the socialist group. It's called, and these would be politicians from EU member states who are representing or affiliated, connected, linked with progressive you know, socialists and center-left parties. And then there's the third largest of these groups is the group of the Alliance of Liberals, and these would be your liberal. They call it now Renew Europe. That's the new name of this party, Renew. But they're the liberals. Okay, so these are the three biggest groups. And here's what it looks like today. I updated this. This is fresh information that I updated. 705 members. The blue area, the big blue area there, a little bit to the center right, which is, you know, should be, that's the People's Party. Those are the conservatives there. They dominate with 176 members of the European Parliament. And then the red, of course, are the center left. And then the liberals, Renew, are the yellow there. Then you have the Greens, right? And then you have the let's see, what is this one? Oh, the European. Let's see. I think this one is. Oh yeah, this one is. Let's see. Alina, can you help me out here? I've forgotten what the ECR is. Can't remember. Change the name. Yeah, I forget what we can check. We can Google that one and check what that stands for. But they've changed the name a few times, so I get a little confused myself. ECR party. Let me just Google that real quick. Let's see. These are the reformists. The European conservative reform. They would like to This is kind of the Eurosceptics. They've changed their name a few times. ECR is the current one. European conservatives and reformists. You remember some of these British, like Nigel Farage. They were skeptics. So that's the ECR. The ID. These are the far right. These are Identity and Democracy. They're the far right, and then the left is the far left. And then NI are not affiliated with any party. You've got 46 of those in the parliament. Okay. Of course, they can vote, but they're not in a party bloc. So but the People's Party has been dominating parliament for years. The Conservatives and the Christian Democrats, and that's continues on today. Okay, now this next one is pretty important. The types of European law that can be debated by Parliament. First of all, first proposed by the Commission and then debated by the Parliament and voted. Regulations. You probably heard of a regulation. A regulation of the European Union is the strongest type of the European Union law. It's directly applicable to all the member states. In other words, the member states must make this law work exactly as it is written. There's no exceptions. All 27 member states must obey this regulation strictly. Now, a directive is another type of a European Union law. A directive is similar to a regulation. All the member states must do it, but it's flexible about how they do it, deciding upon how they implement, how they make the law work. That's a directive. So regulation is the most strict. Member states must do it exactly as it is written. Directive, I'll give you an example of a directive, would be in the area of environment. Like, and because, you know, you have some countries like Denmark with very strong environment, and some countries like Greece or Spain or Portugal with not so strong environment and need time. They need time and they need maybe an alternative way to follow this directive, okay? So that's okay. A decision, this is the third type of European law. Decision is focused on a particular member state, a particular could be a group or even a particular person. You probably heard of the European Union decision on certain international entities like Microsoft, things like that. Could be focused on a particular a state like the United States or one of the member states, or on a particular organization or a particular person. Those are decisions. Now, a fourth thing that the parliament can debate, they can give recommendations or opinions. These are non-binding, so this is not European law, but these would be recommendations or opinions for whom? For the Commission, maybe, so the Commission can formulate new proposals, or for the Council of the European Union, yeah, to think about. So yes, but that's not part of the big three here of European law. Here it is in Ukrainian language a little bit. Okay. Dr. Iotova, how much time do we have? Do we still have a little time left?
I think that we have not so much time, probably 10 minutes more and 5 minutes for final discussion.
You know what we can do? Well, yeah. Should we do this then in two parts? Should we divide it?
Probably we can share, this lecture on two parts,
Okay, good. Yeah, so let's see how far, maybe in the next few minutes, how far I can go, and we'll see.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. And so here again, so again, please remember this is very important. The three types of European law: regulations, directives, and decisions. The three, okay? Now, we come to the Court of Justice. And the Court of Justice, this is their emblem. And here's their building. Now, they are also not located in Brussels. They're located in Luxembourg City, in the Court of Justice building. Again, very interesting, distinctive style building here. Now, what's this Court of Justice? By the way, this has almost nothing to do with human rights. You're thinking of the European Court of Human Rights. That's different. The European Union's Court of Justice is about EU law. It's based in Luxembourg. The character, I would say, supranational. What's good for all 27 member states? What is correct? What's legal for all 27 member states? The formal name of this court, the Court of Justice of the European Union. Working language is French. You've got 27 judges, one representing each member state, and they're appointed for 6 years at a time. And they can go again, they can be reappointed. 11 advocates general, advisors, on a rotating basis. Each member state gets to appoint one of these 11 on a rotating basis. Many people believe that the real power in the Court of Justice are these advocates general, because they bring the cases to the attention of the court, so that the court will then decide about these, if they take a case or they don't take a case. And they also advise the judges along the way when considering the case. Now, what is the role of the Court of Justice? Well, it has a European Union civil law role. That means only European law can they decide about, only European Union law. They cannot decide about Slovak civil or Slovak criminal law. Italian civil or Italian, no. Only if it's conflicting, if it's in conflict with EU law, can they decide on that. But no. So only EU law can they voice. Now, they can do two things: direct actions and preliminary rulings. Direct action is where the court will make a decision, a concrete decision on a concrete case. For example, Slovakia, you are wrong in this case. You're not following the law. You got 3 months or 6 months to repair this situation, to get your domestic law, Slovakia, linked together with EU law. Okay, that would be a direct decision, direct action. But most of the time, the court is not doing these direct actions. Most of the work of the court is preliminary ruling. What does that mean? That means when the European Commission proposes a new law, and the Council of the European Union says, yes, we want that to be a law. Parliament, European Parliament says yes, and suddenly it's a new law. Well, then Slovakia is thinking, wow, we don't really understand this law. So Slovakia will make an appeal. They will contact the Court of Justice for a preliminary ruling, for a best way to say it is clarification, making it clear what this law is and how we shall make it work in Slovakia, how we will implement it. And that's really much of what the Court of Justice is doing, are these preliminary rulings. Now, the next role is constitutional law role. And this is interesting because some of you might be thinking, well, but the European Union doesn't have a constitution. They tried, remember a few years ago, they tried it in Rome. They had a constitutional convention and it didn't work. It was voted down. But actually, that's true. There's no constitution in a single document. But the Court of Justice has ruled, I think it was 1979, where the Court of Justice said the treaties, I think there are about 9 major treaties now of the European Union. The treaties of the European Union are the constitution of this organization of the Europe, and therefore, the Court of Justice is a constitutional court. Okay, the Court of Justice has no domestic civil law or criminal law role. Slovak civil law, Slovak criminal law, Austrian, civil law, no. Court has nothing to say with that. That's the business of Slovakia. That's the business of Austria. Now, some years ago, they created a lower court called the General Court because there were so many cases. And this General Court, again, 27 members on the lower court, they take a lot of the work so that the cases that go to the High Court of Justice, they are the really important cases that the General Court passes to them. Okay, here it is in Ukrainian language, a little bit, and I hope that helps a little bit when we put it in Ukrainian language there a little bit, because this is a lot of information here. Mm-hmm. And because we're so close to the end of this discussion, I think I'm just going to go ahead and finish it. And then we'll have, we can even have an extra session where we just have questions. So I'm just going to finish the formal lecture, and we're going to finish with the final of these 5 institutions, the European Council. So we have the Council of the European Union, now European, and this is the logo again of the European Council. It's based in Brussels, character intergovernmental. Yes. Any question or comment here? Okay. What is it? The European, it's the 27 heads of state or government of the member states. These are the prime ministers of the 27 countries meeting together in a group of prime ministers. Now, some countries, they send their president because the president is power in the country. Like France will send Macron, yeah, because the president of France, that's the power position in France. I think in some country, Lithuania does that, Romania, Bulgaria, they do that. They send their president. In addition to these 27 heads of the government or state, it includes the council president. There's the president of this council, and the commission president. That's Mrs. von der Leyen, and the commissioner for foreign affairs, Mr. Borrell. The European Council president is a person elected for 2.5 years, appoints the commission president and the commissioners. We talked about that. European Council has a big role in selecting who is going to be Mrs. von der Leyen. They selected to be the commission president a few years ago, and all those commissioners. They have a visionary role. Where do we want this organization, the EU, to be in 5 or 10 years' time? And they have a proposal role, but not a formal one. The European Council can make no formal proposals of EU law, but they have a lot of power to suggest to the Commission proposals. Only the Commission can make a proposal, remember? But the European Council can suggest to the Commission. And why can they do that? Come on, these are the 27 heads of the member states. They're the ones who are really, and they're selecting those commissioners. So they have big influence over the Commission. They meet about 4 times yearly in high-profile meetings with a lot of media. And they like media because they're the big guys. You know, they love the attention. Here it is in Ukrainian language, just a bit. Just a couple more slides, and then we'll be finished here. So yeah, I hope this helps a little bit to look at it in Ukrainian language. I know, you know, sometimes there's so much information, you just have to look at it in your native language to get it a little bit ingrained in your mind. This is the president of the European Council. Maybe you've heard of him. His name is Charles Michel. He's a former prime minister of Belgium. He was elected for 2.5-year period. He's still there. Yeah, and you know, he is kind of the de facto president of the whole European Union. Now, don't misunderstand, he's not the president. There is no president of the whole European Union. It doesn't exist. But if there's one person that I would say people look at him, say, that's the guy, it's the president of the European Council. And he's from Belgium. Again, the European Council, the 27 heads of government or state from the 27 member states. Okay, this is what he said when he was appointed. The appointment as president of the European Council is a great responsibility for me and a task that I will fulfill with determination. My goal is a united Europe that takes national diversity into account. That's good for Ukraine, huh? The essence of the European Union is solidarity, freedom, mutual respect, and I will promote these values. Here it is in Ukrainian language. And very nice. I like his speech here. This is when he was appointed. He said this. I think he's a good guy and he's doing a good job. I think I hear many positive comments about him compared to the last president. Yeah. But so interesting. Yeah, Charles Michel, I think it's pronounced, former Belgian prime minister. Okay. So let's go to our last slide here. Conclusion. The 5 main institutions of the European Union each represent different characters: supranationalism, intergovernmentalism, democracy, which ultimately give the European Union its unique character. Okay, so thank you for your attention. I know that was long and we went a little bit over, but let's just, maybe we just have a couple minutes. If there are any questions that anybody would like to ask, just feel free.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Reinhardt, for your quite interesting lecture. And maybe really someone has any questions to the professor. Please take your floor for asking.
Okay, thank you, dear professor. I have a question. First, thank you for waiting for us. Unfortunately, due to the air raids, we have sometimes no opportunity to join meeting in time. However, it's great to speak about European Union, and your Ukrainian slides were absolutely helpful.
Oh, thank
you. Regarding decision making, the European Union has a really complicated system that ensures that the interests of every member state are taken into account as much as possible. Well, I'm interested in the following question. If a decision is not approved by, for example, the European Commission, how many times can a proposal be submitted for a second or third vote? And is there a limit for revisions and amendments for a proposal? Please.
Thank you very much. To my knowledge, and again, this is what I understand, a proposal can be reintroduced, but not in exactly the same form, because it wouldn't make any logical sense to make it in the same form. It can be reintroduced in a renewed form, updated form. Very often the way it works is like this. The Commission will make a proposal. This will go to the two institutions, Council of the European Union and the Parliament, simultaneously. The proposal goes to both of them. They will then discuss and make recommendations. And then the Parliament and the Council of the European Union will come together in a consultation body to try to make one version. That will then go back to the Commission, because the Commission has to make the formal proposal for the final approval by the Commission. So to answer your question as best I can, it almost never happens that an identical proposal, because it didn't work, it failed. Now legally, could they propose exactly the same thing in the same Commission 5 years? I don't know, but I feel they could, but they wouldn't, because they wouldn't be successful again. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your question. Any question more? Okay, and I have also one question to Professor. As you said, so institutional base of European Union is quite national, yeah, national oriented. But let's summarize which authorities are more influential, European Union bodies or national ones?
Yeah, very good. That's difficult to say because it really depends on the area of what we call competency. You probably know in your study of the European Union, everyone, that the European Union has its own language. And this language is often what we call euphemistic. It means, for example, when you say to somebody that, oh, my aunt or my uncle, they passed away. Well, what we really mean, they died. But we don't want to say they died, they passed away. Well, the European Union has all of this language, which is kind of cloudy. And one of the words they don't like so much is sovereignty, because the member states get very nervous when you talk about sovereignty. Why? Because member states want to hold as much sovereignty in their own country and not give it to Brussels as much as they can. They don't want to transfer too much sovereignty to Brussels. So they use the word competency. Competency, it means sovereignty. Nice, but it sounds nice. Yeah, competence. Oh, okay. So in answer to your question, I think it depends on those areas of competency that the European Union controls. And they control three big ones: agriculture, environment, and trade. Those are the three big those are the sovereignty areas that have been transferred from the member state almost completely to Brussels. For example, Slovakia has almost nothing to do with agriculture. And I mean, of course, we have an agricultural ministry, but all the rules about agriculture and growing crops and selling and buying is all made in Brussels. Brussels has the authority, the sovereign authority. So I would say, yeah, that's a great question. And I would say the answer would be the authority that is dominant would be strictly in those competency areas of the European Union. And all the other competency areas that have not been transferred to Brussels, those would still be in the hands of the member states. Yeah. Especially, I would say very notably, foreign policy. Member states still jealously hold on to diplomacy and foreign policy because that's really the high point of your country's sovereignty. If they would give that to Brussels, I think that would probably be the very last thing that they would transfer to Brussels.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Reinhardt, for your time, for your lecture, for your answers to our questions. And I hope that we will see you in the next times in frame of our project. So thank you very much to you, to all our students, to all our audience for your time and for your attention, and see you next time.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. I want to thank you for the opportunity because I really enjoyed it. And I think that you know, I really am optimistic about Ukraine eventually coming into the European Union.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Reinhardt. See you next time. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.